There is a force within you that most men will never meet. A second self, a hidden self, a self so dangerous, so powerful that if it were fully awakened, your entire life would change so violently that your friends would no longer recognize you. And that is precisely why most men never find it. They are afraid of what it would demand of them, afraid of what it would strip away, afraid of what it would make possible. I call it the other self. It has lifted men from despair into fortune overnight. It has transformed cowards into conquerors, failures into masters, beggars into kings. It is not imagination. It is not daydream. It is real and it is waiting inside you. But here is the truth. If I told you now exactly how to unlock it, you would laugh. You would say that cannot be enough, and that cannot be so simple. You would dismiss it, just as millions of men before you have dismissed the very key that would have delivered them. And so I will not hand you the key at once. I will lead you toward it, step by step, until you cannot help but see that it has been in your possession all along. Imagine for a moment what this other self could mean for your life. No more nights staring at the ceiling haunted by bills. No more mornings dragging yourself into work you despise. No more lowering your head when opportunities pass by. The other self does not fear poverty. It does not shrink at criticism. It does not hesitate at risk. It acts with definity, speaks with authority, and carries a magnetism that bends events toward its will. But beware. The other self is not polite. Once awakened, it will not allow you to drift any longer. It will not let you make excuses. It will not permit you to stay small, safe, and hidden. It will demand greatness. And that demand will feel frightening, even unbearable to the timid. That is why most men never open this door. They sense the danger of becoming who they were meant to be, and they retreat into comfort. And yet for those who dare, those who are tired of drifting, tired of excuses, tired of half-living, the awakening of the other self is the dividing line between mediocrity and mastery. Once it is unlocked, fear dissolves, failure becomes fuel, defeat becomes instruction, desire turns into decree, and decree turns into reality. In the next few moments, I will walk you toward this dangerous discovery. You will see why so few ever touch it, why those who do are never the same, and why your entire destiny hangs on whether you are brave enough to awaken it. So I ask you now, will you stay safe drifting with the crowd, or will you risk awakening the power within you that is too dangerous for most men to hear, let alone to use? Every man carries within him two distinct selves. The first is timid, cautious, hesitant, enslaved by fear. It clings to safety, drifts with the crowd, obeys appearances, and shrinks from boldness. The second is bold, decisive, definite. The other self, it demands greatness, refuses excuses, and commands reality. This self is dangerous to mediocrity, but it is the only path to mastery. Most men live as half men. They let the timid self sit upon the throne of their destiny. They dream but never act. They hope but never believe. They desire but never demand. They die with their music unsung, not because the other self did not exist within them, but because they never awakened it. Fear lulled them into sleep, and drifting became their grave. Look to Abraham Lincoln. Early in life, he was mocked, defeated, ridiculed, and scorned. Reality said he was a failure. The timid self whispered that he should surrender, retreat, and live in obscurity. Yet within him stirred the other self, quiet at first, but growing stronger with each trial. When it finally awakened, he became unshakable, destined to lead a nation through its darkest hour. The timid self is a jailer. It keeps you bound with chains of hesitation. It whispers that you are not ready, not worthy, not capable. It convinces you to obey fear, to worship appearances, to remain small. The other self is a warrior. It laughs at fear, cuts through hesitation, and demands victory. It is chained within most men, but it waits to be released. Say with me now, I possess another self. I awaken it. I command it to lead me to greatness. Speak these words not as a wish, but as a command, for the other self responds to definities. It will not stir for the man who drifts, but when you affirm boldly, when you demand its presence, it awakens, and once awakened, it will never again let you settle for mediocrity. The timid self sees obstacles and turns back. The other self sees obstacles and laughs, for it knows each is merely a test of faith. The timid self fears criticism and hides its ideas. The other self welcomes criticism, for it knows that ridicule is the proof of daring. The timid self bows to circumstances. The other self commands them to change. Every great achievement in history is proof of the other self in action. Edison ignored failure because his other self demanded persistence. Ford ignored ridicule because his other self demanded vision. Carnegie ignored poverty because his other self demanded riches. These men were not born greater than others. They simply released the warrior within, while most men kept him chained. Picture your other self as a giant locked within you, muscles bound by chains, eyes burning with fire, fists straining against the bars. Each time you act in fear, you tighten his chain. Each time you act with faith, you loosen them. Each affirmation of courage strikes a link. Each decision to persist shatters another. One day, with a final blow, he breaks free, and life will never be the same. The timid self seeks safety, but safety is an illusion. No man was ever rewarded for hiding. Fortune flows to the bold, not the cautious. The timid self prays for comfort, but comfort is the enemy of growth. The other self demands discomfort, for it knows growth is found in struggle. It seeks challenge, welcomes risk, and transforms adversity into strength. Repeat again, I possess another self, I awaken it. I command it to lead me to greatness. Let this vow burn into your subconscious. Each time you repeat it, you weaken the hold of fear. Each time you declare it, you feed the other self. Soon it will no longer wait for your permission. It will rise, seize command, and drag you toward destiny. Whether you feel ready or not, remember this truth. The timid self is weak because it feeds on fear. The other self is strong because it feeds on faith. Which self will rule you depends on what you repeat daily, what you affirm nightly, what you act upon continually. Choose wisely, for one will enslave you, and the other will set you free. Both live within you, but only one can rule. Drifting is the quiet death of men. It does not strike suddenly, nor does it announce itself with thunder. It seeps in silently, persuading you to delay, to wait, to compromise, to adjust to life instead of commanding it. Drifting is the enemy of definities, and definities is the lifeblood of the other self. Without it, the warrior within you lies dormant. The timid self loves drifting. It prefers to avoid decisions, to stay in comfort, to postpone action. It whispers, tomorrow will be better. Someday, I will begin. I will wait until I am ready. But tomorrow never comes. Someday never arrives. Men drift year after year until they awaken old, weak, and defeated, wondering why fortune passed them by. The other self cannot tolerate drifting. It demands definities in thought, decisiveness in action, and persistence in pursuit. It cannot thrive in vagueness. It cannot live in delay. It comes alive only when a man fixes his desire, chooses a definite aim, and refuses to waver. Drifting suffocates it. Decision awakens it. This is the eternal law. Look at the story of Rue Derby. In the mines, he and his uncle struck gold, but after a few weeks, the vein vanished. They drifted into doubt. They listened to fear. They surrendered their tools and sold their right. The man who purchased their claim consulted an engineer, persisted, and struck gold 3 feet from where Derby quit. The timid self had won, but Derby learned. He vowed never again to quit so easily. In insurance, he applied persistence. Prospect after prospect told him no. The timid self whispered, "Give up," but Derby's new vow drowned it out. He acted as though each rejection brought him closer to success. He engraved Definitis into his subconscious. The other self, once ignored, now ruled him. He became rich. How many men quit three-finned from their own gold? How many allow drifting to persuade them that defeat is permanent, that failure is final, that effort is wasted? The timid self thrives on such lies. The other self knows better. It whispers, "Hold on, strike again. The gold is near." The man who listens rises. The man who drifts dies poor. Drifting is a fog. It surrounds the mind, blurring vision, dulling desire, numbing ambition. Men who drift cannot see far ahead. They live day by day, reacting instead of creating, hoping instead of commanding. Their lives are accidents, not achievement. But Definitis is a blade that cuts through the fog. The other self wields this blade and clears the path. Say with me now, I refuse to drift. I think with Definitis. I act with power. Repeat this until the words carve into your nature. The subconscious cannot resist repetition. Each time you declare this, the fog grows thinner. Each time you affirm it, the other self sharpens its blade. Soon you will no longer tolerate drifting, for decisiveness will feel natural. The timid self says, "I will wait for the right time," but the other self declares, "The time is now." The timid self says, "I need more knowledge." The other self answers, "I will act with what I have and learn in motion." The timid self says, "It is too risky." The other self commands, "Risk is the price of greatness. I will pay it gladly." Look again at Henry Ford. Reality said the automobile could not be produced cheaply. Experts ridiculed him. Investors doubted him. Had Ford drifted, the idea would have died in his mind. But his other self was awake. He acted decisively. He built, tested, failed, and built again. His Definitis cut through every fog until the world surrendered to his vision. Drifting makes slaves. The drifter depends on others to decide his fate. He asks, "Who will hire me? Who will save me? Who will tell me what to do?" The definite man makes masters. He declares, "I will create. I will command. I will lead." The timid self clings to safety. The other self carves fortune. The world belongs to the definite. Repeat aloud once more, I refuse to drift. I think with Definitis. I act with power. Let this be your nightly vow. Engrave it until the subconscious accepts it as law. Then when hesitation arises, you will act. When doubt whispers, you will decide. When drifting tempts, you will cut through with Definitis. The other self will command, and drifting will die. Drifting is subtle. It disguises itself as patience, as prudence, as caution. But true prudence acts when opportunity calls. True wisdom seizes the moment. Drifting only postpones. It is not careful. It is cowardly. The timid self justifies it with excuses. But the truth is simple. Drifting is fear disguised as reason. The other self sees through the mask and acts. Every empire in history proves this law. Men like Carnegie, Rockefeller, Edison, and Ford did not drift. They decided. They fixed their aims and pursued them with persistence. Their Definitis awakened their other selves, which commanded circumstances until reality bent. The timid men around them delayed, hesitated, drifted, and were forgotten. Decisions separated masters from slaves. Therefore, I command you, examine your life. Where are you drifting? Where are you postponing? Where are you waiting for someday? Burn those lies now. Replace them with Definitis. Write your desire. Seep it nightly. Act on it daily. Refuse to drift another hour. Each moment of drifting weakens you. Each act of Definitis strengthens the other self within. Drifting is death, but Definitis is life. Choose life. Choose decision. Choose power. Say again, I refuse to drift. I think with Definitis. I act with power. Make this your battle cry. Live it until the timid self has no voice. The other self will rise armed with Definitis and lead you into the greatness for which you were born. Defeat is not the end. It is the beginning. Crisis is not your destroyer. It is your awakener. Most men shrink from hardship, trembling at the sight of loss, ridicule, and failure. Yet within every crushing blow lies the seed of strength. It is in moments of despair that the timid self falters and the other self rises. Pain is often the midwife of power. The timid self cannot withstand defeat. It whines. It complains. It justifies failure. It says, "This is too much. I am finished. I cannot go on." But the other self stirs at the sound of crisis. It thrives where the timid self dies. It whispers, "Now is the time to fight. Now is the time to grow. This storm is my training ground." Crisis awakens the warrior. Henry Ford knew this well. He faced bankruptcy, ridicule, and repeated failure. Fact after fact declared him beaten. But Ford's other self would not surrender. Each setback hardened his resolve. Each defeat strengthened his persistence. When others quit, he pressed on. From those ashes, his other self fully awakened, and with it, the empire of the automobile was born. Thomas Edison, too, faced crisis countless times. 10,000 failed experiments, critics mocking him as insane, investors withdrawing their support. The timid self would have died long before, but Edison's other self laughed at defeat. He treated each failure as instruction, each crisis as fuel. In the end, the same world that called him foolish bowed before his light. It is no accident that crisis often comes before greatness. Infinite intelligence uses hardship to strip away weakness. When comfort is gone, the timid self has no refuge. When defeat strikes, the timid self has no excuse left. Then, and only then, does the other self emerge, because necessity demands it. Men who avoid crisis avoid their destiny. Say aloud, "My defeats awaken my strength. My crisis calls forth my power." Speak these words until you believe them. Each time hardship strikes, repeat them again. Refuse to whine. Refuse to retreat. Affirm that the very crisis meant to destroy you will be your making. The other self answers to this command. It is not afraid of storms. It was born in them. Abraham Lincoln endured crushing defeats, business failures, repeated election losses, ridicule from enemies, and personal tragedy. Any timid self would have yielded. Yet Lincoln's defeats forged his character. Each crisis drew forth more of his strength, until his other self became permanent. When the nation itself entered crisis, Lincoln's awakened self carried it to survival. Do not fear ridicule. Do not fear bankruptcy. Do not fear rejection. Each is only the hammer striking your soul to awaken the giant within. The timid self prays for safety and avoids blows. The other self welcomes them, knowing each strike awakens new strength. Every defeat endured with faith is another crack in the chains that bind the warrior within. Picture crisis. Fire. The timid self is consumed by it. The other self is refined by it. Gold is purified only when heated. Steel is forged only when hammered. Men are awakened only when tested. Do not curse your fire. Bless it, for it is shaping the man your destiny demands. Without the flame, you would remain dull metal. Say once more, "My defeats awaken my strength. My crisis calls forth my power." Engrave this truth into your subconscious. Then when hardship arrives, you will not collapse. You will stand. You will fight. You will rise. The timid self will retreat, but the other self will step forward. It will not only endure, it will conquer. History remembers not the men who lived in comfort, but those who faced crisis and triumphed. Ford, Edison, Lincoln, Carnegie, Rockefeller. Each was tested. Each endured ridicule, failure, and hardship. But each allowed the fire to awaken their other self. Comfort would have left them ordinary. Crisis made them immortal. The same law applies to you. Therefore, I command you, never again curse your defeats. Welcome them. Look each crisis in the eye and say, "You are my servant. You are here to awaken my strength." Act not as a victim, but as a conqueror. For every storm is a summons, every defeat a doorway, every crisis a call. The timid self will die, and the other self will live. Faith is the language of power. The timid self speaks in doubt, fear, hesitation, and apology. The other self speaks only in faith, clear, decisive, commanding. Faith is not a gentle hope. It is a decree. It is the conviction that what I imagine must exist, that what I demand must arrive, that what I affirm must become fact. Without faith, the other self remains asleep. Faith is the bridge between desire and reality. Desire ignites the fire, but faith fuels it. Without faith, desire burns weakly, flickers, and dies when obstacles appear. With faith, desire becomes unstoppable, a force that bends circumstances. The timid self sees obstacles and retreats. The other self, armed with faith, sees the same obstacles and declares, "They will fall." Andrew Carnegie was born into poverty. By every measure of reality, he should have remained poor. Yet within him lived a faith so absolute that poverty could not hold him. He believed with burning conviction that riches would be his. He acted as though wealth already belonged to him. That faith commanded his other self to awaken, and soon fortune obeyed. Charles Schwab impressed Carnegie not with learning, but with faith. He spoke with certainty. He radiated belief. While others hesitated, Schwab acted as though success was inevitable. Carnegie recognized the presence of the other self within him and elevated him. Schwab's bold faith became a magnet, drawing opportunity that timid men could never attract. Say aloud now, "I believe in my destiny. I act as though it is already mine. My faith is greater than appearances. Speak it not as a wish, but as truth." Faith cannot be half-hearted. It must be absolute. Each time you affirm this, the timid self grows weaker. Each time you live it, the other self grows stronger. Soon faith becomes your only language. Faith silences fear. Fear whispers, "What if you fail?" Faith answers, "Failure cannot last." Fear says, "You are not ready." Faith replies, "I am ready because I believe." Fear cries, "Reality is against you." Faith laughs, "Reality must bend to me." Faith is the voice of the other self, and once it speaks, fear is silenced. Picture faith as a torch in your hand. The timid self stumbles in darkness, terrified of what it cannot see. The other self lights the torch of faith and strides forward, undisturbed by the unknown. Each affirmation is fueled for the flame. Each act of courage makes the fire brighter. Soon the path ahead is illuminated, and doubt is driven away. Abraham Lincoln lived by faith. Defeated in elections, mocked by critics, overwhelmed by personal loss, he never surrendered. He believed in his mission with such conviction that no defeat could shake it. That faith awakened his other self, turning him from a broken man into a leader unshakable in crisis. His enemies saw weakness, but his faith declared destiny. Edison, too, lived by faith. 10,000 failures mocked him. Experts told him to quit. Yet he believed in light more strongly than he believed in darkness. His faith was so absolute that his subconscious accepted it as law. The other self acted with certainty until the impossible became inevitable. Faith spoke through him and the world was illuminated. Repeat again, "I believe in my destiny. I act as though it is already mine. My faith is greater than appearances." Speak this before sleep. Speak it upon waking. Speak it in the face of defeat. Each repetition engraves it into your subconscious. Each engraving awakens the other self. Soon faith is not something you practice. It is who you are. Faith does not ask permission. It does not seek approval. It does not wait for facts. It declares and acts. The timid self studies endlessly, analyzing until the chance has passed. The other self believes first, acts boldly, and refines in motion. This is why timid scholars are forgotten, while bold men of faith are remembered. The world rewards faith, not hesitation. Carnegie once said that every man must be willing to believe in great riches before he will ever possess them. He knew the law. Faith precedes possession. The timid self asks, "When I see it, I will believe." The other self knows, "When I believe, I will see it." This reversal is the essence of greatness. Faith creates the evidence it declares. Therefore, I command you, stop speaking the timid language of doubt. Never again say, "I cannot. I am not ready. It is impossible." These are the words of the timid self. Replace them with the words of faith. "I will. I am ready. It is inevitable." Speak them until they become your only vocabulary. Then the other self will rule, and reality must obey. Autosuggestion is the daily bread of the other self. Just as the body weakens without food, the other self withers without suggestion. It feeds not on accidents, not on chance, but on deliberate repetition. The timid self listens to random voices of fear, criticism, and doubt. The other self listens only to commands, clear, definite, repeated, until they are law. Every thought you repeat engraves itself into the subconscious. Each word spoken with emotion strikes deeper. The timid self rehearses defeat. "I am unlucky. I cannot succeed. The world is against me." The subconscious accepts and multiplies these lies until they appear as reality. But when you affirm boldly, "I am power, I am persistence," the other self rises. Are you? Darby's story proves this law. He quit 3 feet from gold and his timid self ruled him. Later he vowed, "I will never quit again." That vow, repeated daily, became his identity. His subconscious accepted persistence as natural, and his other self took command. He built a fortune in insurance, not by skill alone, but by autosuggestion engraved into habit. Say with me now, "I command my subconscious. I am power. I am persistence. I am wealth." Speak it aloud. Speak it with conviction. Speak it until you feel it. Autosuggestion is not idle talk. It is the chisel that carves your destiny. Each repetition deepens the groove. Each affirmation engraves another line into stone. Soon the timid self is erased. The timid self feeds on careless words. Each complaint is food for weakness. Each fearful whisper is fuel for doubt. If you say, "I cannot afford this," your subconscious records poverty. If you declare, "I am unlucky," your subconscious engraves misfortune. Most men destroy themselves not by enemies, but by their own tongues. Words are seeds, and each bears fruit. The other self refuses to eat from this table. It demands deliberate commands. It accepts only affirmations of power, divinity, and victory. When you say, "I succeed," "I persist," "I am destined," the subconscious obeys. Repeated often enough, these words form identity. When identity is fixed, action flows naturally. The other self no longer struggles. It commands. Think of Edison. He often planted problems in his mind before sleep, suggesting, "I will find the answer." By morning, ideas appeared as though delivered by unseen hands. He trusted the law of auto-suggestion. His subconscious, receiving commands, worked with infinite intelligence to provide solutions. The timid self drifts in dreams. The other self commands the night. Repeat again, "I command my subconscious. I am power. I am persistence. I am wealth." Make this your nightly ritual. Each repetition is a meal for the other self. Each command is another stone laid upon the foundation of destiny. Feed it daily and it will grow mighty. Starve it by drifting and it will weaken until the timid self reclaims the throne. Picture auto-suggestion as a steady diet. Feed fear and fear becomes strong. Feed faith and faith becomes unbreakable. Feed poverty and poverty multiplies. Feed riches and riches appear. The law is impartial. It does not care what you repeat. It only obeys. You are the master who decides the menu. Choose wisely, for your life is the harvest of your words. John D. Rockefeller repeated discipline daily. Save, reinvest, expand. These words became his creed. His subconscious accepted them, and cosmic habit force fixed them as nature. He could no more waste money than he could stop breathing. That repetition built an empire. His other self ruled because his suggestions were definite, repeated until identity and destiny were one. The timid self says, "I will try." The other self says, "I will." The timid self says, "Someday." The other self says, "Now." Each time you use timid words, you strengthen weakness. Each time you use definite commands, you strengthen power. The subconscious does not know sarcasm. It does not laugh at jokes. It only obeys. Guard your speech as you would guard treasure. Repeat once more, "I command my subconscious. I am power. I am persistence. I am wealth." Let these words strike like hammers. Each blow shapes you. Each echo awakens the giant within. Each affirmation silences the timid voice until only the warrior remains. This is not imagination. It is law. What you repeat, you become. What you become, you achieve. Therefore, I command you, never again feed the timid self with words of weakness. Starve it. Refuse it. From this moment, let your tongue serve only the other self. Speak courage. Speak definites. Speak persistence. Feed it daily until it grows too strong to be denied. Then the timid self will wither, and the other self will rule forever. Decision is the sharp edge of power. Without decision, desire is wasted. Faith is idle. Auto-suggestion is ignored. The timid self thrives in hesitation, forever weighing, doubting, delaying. The other self is crowned the moment a man decides swiftly and firmly, and stands by that decision until it is fulfilled. Indecision is weakness. Decision is mastery. The timid self whispers, "Wait until you know more." But no man in history ever knew everything before he began. The timid self whispers, "Wait until the risk is smaller," but risk never disappears. The timid self whispers, "Wait for approval," but approval comes only after victory. Decision ignores these whispers. It declares, "I will," and acts at once. Abraham Lincoln's greatness was born in decision. When the Union trembled, when advisors urged compromise, Lincoln decided the Union must be preserved. That decision crowned his other self. It gave him strength to endure war, criticism, and sorrow. Without decision, he would have been forgotten. With decision, he became immortal in the memory of mankind. Henry Ford's decision changed the world. Experts declared the automobile too costly for the common man. They laughed at his vision, but Ford decided, "I will build a car for the people." That decision became his crown. He refused to turn back. Every act, every plan, every invention aligned with that decision until reality bowed to his will. Say aloud now, "I decide swiftly. I act boldly. I stand by my decisions." Speak it until the words engrave themselves into your nature. The timid self hesitates, hoping for certainty before it acts. The other self acts, creating certainty by persistence. Decision is not perfect knowledge. Decision is the courage to commit and to make knowledge serve the choice. Charles Schwab won Carnegie's trust not by timidity, but by decision. While others hesitated, Schwab acted. He spoke with clarity, committed with courage, and never wavered. Carnegie recognized that decisiveness is rare, and he rewarded it richly. Opportunity is attracted to men who decide. It avoids men who hesitate. Decision is a magnet for fortune. Picture indecision as a prison. Each doubt adds another bar. Each hesitation locks another chain. The timid self paces endlessly, waiting for permission to act. Decision is the key. The moment you say, "I will," the lock shatters. The door swings open. The other self walks out free. Every definite choice is another act of liberation. The timid self believes there is safety in delay. In truth, delay is the most dangerous of all choices. Opportunities appear and vanish. Fortune knocks, and while the timid man debates, the bold man answers. History remembers the man who seized, not the man who waited. Delay is defeat. Decision is victory. Repeat again. I decide swiftly. I act boldly. I stand by my decisions. Let this become your creed. Weak men change their minds often, fearing to be wrong. Strong men decide and adjust in motion, refusing to retreat. The other self cannot exist without decision, for decision is its voice. When you decide, you awaken it. When you hesitate, you bury it. Edison decided that light would exist. 10,000 failures could not shake that decision. He did not reconsider, did not retreat. He stood by his choice until victory came. His decision was the crown of his other self. Without it, he would have joined the timid crowd who laughed at his vision. With it, he forced the world to believe. Carnegie decided as a boy that he would be rich. That decision guided every step. It drew allies, opened opportunities, and compelled persistence. The timid self says, "I hope." The other self says, "I decide." Hope waits for chance. Decision creates destiny. Hope is powerless. Decision is law. Therefore I command you, never again drift in hesitation. Never again postpone for fear of being wrong. Decide. Decide swiftly. Stand firmly and act boldly. Even if imperfect, decision awakens power, while hesitation kills it. Say once more, I decide swiftly. I act boldly. I stand by my decisions. Speak it until your timid self dies. The crown of the other self is yours. When you decide, each firm choice adds another jewel. Each bold stand adds another stone. Soon the timid self has no throne, no crown, no voice. Decision reigns, and the warrior within commands your destiny. This is the law. Decision is mastery. Decision is power. Decision is the crown of the other self. The timid self isolates. It hides its ideas for fear of criticism. It withdraws from strong men, preferring the safety of mediocrity. But the other self seeks alliance, for it knows no man achieves greatness alone. The mastermind principle is the lifeblood of expansion. Two or more minds in harmony, united in purpose, creating a power no single man can command alone. Carnegie admitted openly that his fortune was not the product of his own knowledge, but of his mastermind alliance. He surrounded himself with men of greater technical skill and deeper schooling. Yet his other self directed them with definitus. He provided vision and decision while their combined genius supplied execution. That harmony created steel empires. Alone he would have been nothing. Thomas Edison filled his laboratories with allies. He directed their knowledge through his own definitus of purpose. His other self knew that cooperation multiplies results, where the timid self says, "I must do this alone lest others steal my idea." The other self declares, "Together we shall accomplish what no man dares to dream." Fear isolates, faith unites. Say aloud, "I ally with courage. I attract minds of strength. Together we are irresistible." These are not idle words. They are commands to your subconscious to draw allies who match your definitus. Each repetition engraves expectation. Soon you meet men of courage, minds of faith, hearts of persistence. The timid self repels them. The other self attracts them like a magnet. Picture the other self as a blazing fire. Alone, its flame burns strong, but joined with others, it becomes a roaring furnace that melts obstacles. The timid self is like a single coal, isolated and fading. The mastermind connection is the furnace of destiny. Each allied mind is another log added to the fire. United, they produce a heat no adversity can endure. Charles Schwab rose because Carnegie recognized in him the spirit of faith and decisiveness. Their alliance multiplied power. Schwab's boldness inspired workers, while Carnegie's vision directed enterprise. The timid self seeks servants. The other self seeks partners. The timid self demands obedience. The other self demands harmony. Harmony creates fortune. Discord breeds defeat. The timid self fears criticism, so it isolates. But isolation starves ideas. The other self welcomes challenge, for it sharpens thought. In a true mastermind, allies do not flatter. They strengthen, advise, correct, and contribute. Their combined thought opens channels to infinite intelligence. Ideas appear that no man alone could summon. This is the secret engine of empires. Repeat again, I ally with courage. I attract minds of strength. Together we are irresistible. Speak this until your subconscious expects alliance instead of isolation. Soon you will recognize allies where before you saw strangers. Opportunities for harmony will appear where once you saw none. The timid self will fade and the other self will walk with companions of power. John D. Rockefeller practiced alliance as habit. He coordinated with bankers, lawyers, and competitors until Standard Oil was invincible. He did not fear sharing, for his other self knew harmony produces more than hoarding. Each ally added strength. Each partnership expanded reach. Isolation might have made him cautious, but alliance made him master of markets. The timid self says, I cannot trust others. The other self replies, I do not fear betrayal, I command harmony. Infinite intelligence rewards the man who trusts boldly, who unites fearlessly, who builds alliances with definitiveness. The timid self hoards crumbs. The other self gathers banquets. The timid self dies forgotten. The other self builds legacies through alliance. Imagine your other self as a magnet. When you awaken it, you cannot help but draw strong minds to you. They sense your definitiveness, your faith, your courage. They are compelled to join you, for harmony is attractive. But if the timid self rules you, repel strength. Strong men avoid drift. Fortune avoids hesitation. Only the definite can unite. Say once more, I ally with courage. I attract minds of strength. Together we are irresistible. These words are not mere sounds. They are blueprints. Each time you repeat them, you instruct your subconscious to open doors to alliance. Soon your life fills with men who sharpen you, women who inspire you, opportunities that multiply your reach. The timid self cannot explain it. The other self expects it. Therefore I command you, abandon isolation. Refuse the lie that you must achieve alone. Seek harmony with those who match your courage and faith. Create alliances where each mind contributes. Each will align, and all energy flows toward a definite aim. This is the law of the mastermind. This is the language of the other self. This is the secret of empire. Fear is the language of the timid self. It speaks in whispers of poverty, criticism, sickness, loneliness, age, and death. These 6 ghosts of fear enslave the majority of men. They bow before shadows, trembling at illusions, wasting their lives in hesitation. The other self knows no such slavery. It does not bargain with fear. It silences it. The timid self fears poverty and clings to wages, living always on the edge of despair. But the other self laughs at poverty. It declares, I demand riches. Andrew Carnegie began in poverty, yet his fearless other self rose above it and compelled fortune to follow him. Poverty is not destiny. It is the timid self's surrender. Riches belong to the fearless. The timid self fears criticism, silencing bold ideas to avoid ridicule. But Henry Ford ignored the laughter of experts. They mocked his dream of automobiles for the masses, calling him foolish. His other self was deaf to their criticism. He persisted until critics bowed before his factories. Fear of criticism kills ideas. Fearlessness crowns them with victory. The timid self fears ill health, imagining sickness until it multiplies. But the other self commands vitality. It affirms, my body is servant to my mind. Edison, often frail in health, did not let his body chain his spirit. His other self demanded persistence, and his mind carried his body through countless experiments. Fear of illness weakens. Faith in strength heals. The timid self fears the loss of love, clinging desperately and living as a slave to approval. But the other self commands loyalty by strength of character. Men and women admire courage, not weakness. True love grows in the presence of boldness. Fear invites abandonment. Courage commands devotion. The fearless man never begs for love. He inspires it. The timid self fears old age, imagining decline as the end of power. But history proves otherwise. Men like Edison, Carnegie, and Rockefeller worked long into their later years. their other selves burning brightly, while timid men surrendered to decay. Age cannot chain the fearless. Faith and purpose keeps the mind sharp and the will indomitable. The timid self fears death, the final ghost. It whispers, "Why strive, for the grave awaits." But the other self knows death is inevitable, and therefore unworthy of fear. It lives boldly, acting each day as though immortality were its inheritance. The fearless man achieves more in a few years than the fearful man does in a lifetime of timidity. Say aloud, "I do not fear. I command life with courage. I am unshakable." Repeat until it burns within you. Each affirmation weakens the chains of the timid self. Each declaration feeds the warrior within. Soon fear loses its grip, for the subconscious accepts boldness as identity. When identity is fearless, destiny must follow. Picture fear as chains wrapped around your chest. The timid self clutches those chains, refusing to break them. The other self rises, shatters them, and breathes freely. Fear is heavy only if you permit it. Once you reject it, it is nothing but smoke. The other self knows this and strides forward unchained, while the timid self trembles in bondage. Edison ignored ridicule. Ford ignored mockery. Carnegie ignored poverty. Rockefeller ignored criticism. Lincoln ignored repeated defeats. Each silenced fear. Each allowed the other self to speak louder than the ghosts. That choice separated them from the timid crowd. Their triumphs are monuments to fearlessness, proof that the other self conquers when fear is banished. Repeat again, "I do not fear. I command life with courage. I am unshakable." Think it before sleep. Speak it upon waking. Speak it in the face of danger. Each time you repeat it, fear retreats. Each time you act upon it, the other self strengthens. Soon you no longer resist fear. You no longer know it. You are fearless and the world obeys. The timid self prays for safety, but safety is an illusion. No man was ever safe by bowing to fear. Fortune flows to the fearless, not the cautious. Critics fade, poverty vanishes, death comes regardless. Why waste life fearing what cannot be avoided? The fearless man commands today, and by commanding today, he secures tomorrow. Therefore I command you, drive out fear. Do not tolerate its whispers. Do not rehearse its lies. Replace every fearful thought with affirmations of boldness. Replace every trembling step with action of courage. Replace every hesitation with decisive movement. Fear thrives on attention. Ignore it and it starves. Defy it and it flees. Say once more, "I do not fear. I command life with courage. I am unshakable." Engrave it into your subconscious until fearlessness becomes your nature. Then the timid self will die and the other self will rule without rival. This is the law. Fear enslaves the weak, but faith liberates the strong. Choose faith. Choose courage. Choose the fearless nature of the other self. The timid self dies hard even after you awaken the other self. The old habits of drifting, hesitation and fear will try to return. To live permanently as the other self requires discipline. It is not enough to awaken at once. You must enthrone it as ruler. Daily definitus, nightly auto-suggestion, persistent faith, and fearless actions secure its crown forever. John D. Rockefeller lived as his other self permanently. His disciplined habit of saving, reinvesting and expanding became identity. It was not effort, it was nature. He could no more waste money than he could stop breathing. This permanence came from repetition. Each act engraved deeper until cosmic habit force fixed it as law. The timid self had no foothold left. Abraham Lincoln too lived as his other self until the end. Each defeat that once could have crushed him became another lesson engraved into habit. Persistence became natural. Courage became reflex. When destiny called, he did not have to summon strength. He was strength. His other self had become permanent, and the timid self was buried long before his body ever was. Say aloud, "I am my other self. I live boldly. I persist endlessly. I create my destiny." Repeat this until you no longer try to believe it. You know it. Each time you affirm, you strengthen the new identity. Each time you act, you confirm it. Each night you rehearse it. You engrave it deeper. Soon you cannot return to timidity, for your nature has changed. Picture yourself as a sculptor. Each day of definitus, each act of courage, each affirmation is another strike of the chisel. At first the timid self still clings to the stone, but blow after blow its shape is destroyed. In its place emerges the warrior, the other self, shining, complete, unshakable. Once finished, the timid self is gone forever. To live permanently as the other self, you must never drift again. Write your definite chief aim. Review it daily, speak it nightly. Let no day pass without definite action toward it. The timid self thrives on drifting, but the other self thrives on purpose. Where there is definitus, the timid self cannot survive. Purpose is its poison. Repeat again. I am my other self. I live boldly. I persist endlessly. I create my destiny. Let this be your law. Speak it upon rising. Carry it through your day, and seal it upon sleeping. The subconscious will engrave it until no force can erase. Identity will shift, habit will harden, and the timid self will have no return. Edison lived in this permanence. 10,000 failures could not move him, because persistence was his nature. Ford lived in it. Critics could not silence him, because boldness was his identity. Carnegie lived in it. Poverty could not hold him, because wealth was his expectation. Each man lived permanently as his other self, and the timid self was long forgotten. The timid self will try to whisper again. It will say, "You have done enough. You may rest. You may drift." But the other self answers, "I persist endlessly. I act boldly. I live by faith." If you rehearse this long enough, the whispers grow faint. They vanish. The timid self loses its voice. The other self speaks alone, and it commands reality. Therefore I command you, crown the other self permanently. Do not awaken it only to let it sleep again. Do not rise in boldness only to fall back into fear. Strike the timid self daily with faith, decisiveness, persistence, and definitus until it die. Feed the other self until it becomes your permanent nature. Then destiny is yours without struggle. Say once more, I am my other self. I live boldly. I persist endlessly. I create my destiny. When this affirmation is no longer spoken with effort, but with identity, you will know the timid self is gone. You will no longer hope to be great. You will be greatness itself. This is the final victory. To live not as two men, but as